Hey everybody, welcome to my big end of the year list video extravaganza in December. This is part of a series I'm going to be doing. It's probably the only videos I'll be doing this month, and I'm just going to be cataloging the best of what I've consumed this year for media, because that's kind of what I do here now. I'll talk about my favorite books, I'll talk about my favorite movies and video games, because those are my biggest hobbies, really. There'll be best and worst lists, and I wanted to start out with video games. I think we'll do movies second, and we'll do books last. As you can tell, this is audio only because I felt like this would probably just be the best way to do it. So you can you don't need to watch the video, all right? You can go ahead and do your dishes or whatever the hell you're doing and listen. I want to say that this isn't going to be like a typical list video because a lot of those videos are cataloging everything that came out this year. This video is what I played this year. I found the best and the worst, and a lot of what I played this year is not stuff that came out this year, although there's some of that on here. So just keep that in mind, and I guess I'll say it, but of course these are just my opinions, as any video would be. It's all subjective. But I know that there's going to be some shit on here that people are going to be pissed about, but it's just, difference of opinion, I guess you could say. But I'll talk about why I liked or disliked all this. We're going to do honorable mentions because there are just some games that I just couldn't really place on a best or worst. I didn't feel that they deserved either. And those I've ordered kind of in order of how I liked them from best to worst. And then I'll do the worst, get the bad stuff out of the way, and we'll talk about the best games that I played this year. And this will be fun. I've never done a video like this. I think I might have, but I don't think so. And so I'd love to hear like what you played, what your favorite games were. I don't do video games stuff so much on this channel, so I'm not entirely sure what all my subscribers interests are in that realm. But anyways, let's get started with some honorable mentions. My first honorable mention is Lies of P, which came out in, I think, September of this year, maybe August. And this is a Souls-like game from an indie studio. I believe a South Korean studio. I don't remember their name, but people were very excited for this, as us Souls fans often are when these kind of games come out. They don't have the greatest track record. I don't think there are a ton that are really comparable with the Souls games, but honestly, this is probably the best there has been. I know Lords of Fallen also came out this year. I did not play that, and I don't think it was getting great reviews, which is kind of upsetting, but that's all right. Lies of P is by far the best of these. It's when it was shown off, it looked to be very heavily influenced by Bloodborne, and while some of the design aspects of the game definitely look like Bloodborne, particularly in the opening areas. It's a dead ringer for Bloodborne. This is a little more in line with just like Elden Ring's combat, I guess the speed and fluency of the combat. And you play as Pinocchio, and so the game is very much based in that kind of Victorian era steampunk kind of feel, with a lot of Pinocchio characters, and I just really enjoyed this game. I thought it was really fun. I thought the combat was really good, and it brought a lot of interesting mechanics to the game. It took a lot from all sorts of things, and in general, I'd say it was really good. It does have some issues, though. I will say, first off, it's polished quite well. And in terms of performance, I had pretty good performance. I think it could be improved a bit, but the game looked pretty good. And at times, it's hard to tell it's an indie game. It really just stacks up with Bloodborne, with Bloodborne, it kind of does. And I liked that this had more of the smaller linear level-like design. I wish it was a little more interconnected. This game, I'm trying to find out what I would compare it to. Probably like Dark Souls 3 a little bit, and just it's very hallway-esque in the way you go through levels, but I didn't really mind it so much. There's a lot here. There's really cool weapons. I really liked a lot of the bosses, and the story was kind of fun. It was just a really solid game, and there was a lot of tightness in this game. There's not much more to say about it in terms of what I liked. It just is a totally solid Souls-like game, and I'm really excited to see if they were to do DLC or with their next game what they could accomplish. I really hope for the best with this developer in this game, and that they learn from some of their mistakes. They kind of I don't think rectify is a good word, but fix some of the issues in this game. And their next game hopefully is that much better. In terms of the negatives of this game, I thought that there was some jank in it, but a lot of it is in tuning the game and stuff that I don't think they're ever going to do. And many would probably disagree. There were, a lot of people disagreed on this point, but the parry timing, because it kind of takes from Sekiro in the sense there's a lot of parrying in this game. It's not as important as it is in that game, where that's like the central mechanic, but you do use it a lot, and a lot of enemies and mini bosses particularly clearly seem to be designed around it. And I found the parry timing window to be ridiculously small. And there is a little bit of a tip that was going around that you don't necessarily want to tap the button as you do in Sekiro, but hold it. But I still found the parry timing to just be ridiculous. I'm not a god at these games, but I am quite good. I've played every Souls game and beaten it many times over, done challenge runs, and I just found the parry timing so goddamn small in this game. It really was a hindrance in my enjoyment. And maybe it's supposed to be like that and you need to get good, but I don't know if I wanted to play the game that much to get good, if that makes sense. I don't think that the game was that gripping to me to warrant putting 30, 40 hours into learning this sort of mechanic. And some of the bosses were just not tuned well and just ridiculously overpowered or had moves that came out of nowhere. I have a video on my channel where I go more in depth over the pros and cons of this game. So there's still stuff that really pisses me off, but overall it was a very fun game and I enjoyed it, and I'll probably come back and do another run of it. So that's Lies of P. I'll try to make these a little bit shorter because we're going to be here for years if I keep going on like this. So the next game on this list is The Long Dark by Hinterland Studios, which is a studio, I think, in British Columbia. And this game came out, I think, 6 years ago or something like that. Well, it was in early access for like almost 10 years ago, I'd say. But I really came back to it this year. There's a few on this list where I have played them before, but I kind of stopped playing it for whatever reason and came back to. This is a survival game. I guess you could call it. It's in the vein of those survival crafting games, although the crafting, you don't really do that so much in this game. You do craft a few things, but I'd say this is a balls to the walls, bone dry survival game. And I think this is one of the best I've played. This game is probably, this game, a lot of people love it. I feel like this is the kind of game where in 20 years from now, it'll be like a huge cult game because it's just so cool. It's a game that's not for everybody because it's very dry. This game is about being stranded in the Canadian wilderness in the winter and just trying to survive. And it's very brutal and there are difficulty settings, but even on some of like I'd say normal, it can be really hard because if you die, your run is over basically. And a lot of times, man, you can have a run going well and you just get fucked. You get stranded in a snowstorm or something and freeze to death, and that's that. And on higher difficulties, this game is balls to the walls insane, and what comes out of something like that is just incredibly gripping moments of gameplay where I always hate when people, well, I shouldn't say people because I do this myself, but that idea of, oh, you need to create your own fun in the game. You need to create your own story. Some games that's a good thing. Some games that's a bad thing. When there's a lack of content where you kind of need to create some sort of fun to make the game going, like a role-playing thing. But in other games, it kind of comes naturally, and this is a game where it comes naturally through the gameplay. You'll just find yourself in situations that are incredible. I remember one situation I had in this game where I had a little village I was living in, and I was bumping around from houses, trying to stay warm, sleeping in houses, and my supplies were gradually dwindling. And I did get a fishing pole, and I'm going to go try to make a trek to this lake and do some fishing, ice fishing, And the only place I had for shelter on that lake was a very, very small little fishing cabin that was big enough to basically stand up in, and it had a small wood stove in the corner. And it was just one of those situations where it was very tense. It really felt like a life or death kind of situation because I barely had any supplies. I felt like I barely had enough supplies to keep this little cabin heated over the night. And I got stuck in it because there was a huge snowstorm on the lake. And in this game, if you get trapped in a snowstorm, you can't see. You're screwed. And I got to a point where I knew that I had absolutely not enough supplies to make it through the night, and that my character would probably freeze to death while I was sleeping. So I thought I'm just gonna have to go out and make it back to my main house in this snowstorm. So I took off across this lake, and it's a complete whiteout. I had no clue what direction I was going in. My character was eventually on the verge of death, and it was just really tense gameplay. I had no clue where I was going. I could be going in the complete opposite direction, and somehow I made it to my original house in that little village. I don't know how I made it there, but I did, and I ran inside, got the fireplace going, and warmed up. And I think I died like 2 days later. And that's just how this game is, man. There's a lot of great content. There's a huge map too, and the map is designed so that the sections have kind of different difficulty levels. And there's not a lot that kills you in this game. There are wolves in this game that can kill you, but a lot of it is just the elements, and it's just a great game. It's a really solid, intelligent survival game that creates a very cold, isolating feeling at times, and there's some great moments in it. There's also a story mode called Wintermute that I haven't played that I'd like to check out. So yeah, Long Dark goes on here as an honorable mention. I really enjoy it, but I can't say it was the best game I played this year. It doesn't get quite up there, but a really great game that I recommend. And really not too many negatives, I could say. I just think it's kind of an esoteric game and probably wouldn't appeal to everybody's tastes. The next game on this list for honorable mentions is a game called Hi-Fi Rush, which I think a lot of people will probably say is their favorite game of the year, because it is a really good game. Surprisingly good. This was made by a Japanese video game studio called Tango Gameworks. And I think Bethesda was the one that published it. And this is basically like a kind of linear level action game. Kind of like, it almost reminds me at times of like Ratchet and Clank or Jak and Daxter style levels, the way they're kind of linear, and it's just a fun little cartoony action game. But the big selling point of this game is it's kind of a rhythm-based game too. Everything in the game kind of moves to the beat, and you fight to the beat. And it's got a very it's almost like a Scott Pilgrim-esque sort of thing, guitar-based. You fight with you hit people with a guitar. All the moves are music and guitar-centric. Your special meter is called like the reverb gauge, I think. So it's got that going for it. As a guitar player, that's kind of cool to see in a game. And it's just fun. It's a cel-shaded game. I love cel-shaded art styles. I've always liked it. Wind Waker, Cell Damage, those games are awesome. So it's got that going for it, which is great. It's very lighthearted and fun. It has an arcadey sort of feel, the way you get graded for everything you do. It's a little repetitive, which is why it's not super high up on here. I wasn't blown away by it in the way a lot of other people were, but I did find it very fun, and it's good to see games like this that are just arcadey and fun and are, pretty much focused on you having a good time, which I think is the main goal of this game, is ensuring at all times that you're enjoying yourself. And one of the issues I had with this, and I don't think this is probably going to bother so many other people, because I'm a musician and a rhythm section player, it was really cool that a lot of the stuff is in sync. And I mean, like, you'll have platforms that are moving in and out to the beat. And that's really cool. I've never seen that in a game. But attacking in rhythm is great, but the attack animations are not in rhythm, and that really screws with my brain. The attack animations are just kind of basic attack animations, but you do everything in sync. So what I'm seeing happen is not really in line with the music often. So it creates this disconnect where you must trust your button presses to be, in sync with the music, which is not particularly hard to do in this game, but there's just, like I said, a weird disconnect visually, and that can create some issues for me in the game, and I don't know if that will affect other people as much, But like I said, as a rhythm section player, that was really distracting a lot of the times. And that's really what kept me from, really liking this game. But overall, it's a fun game, and I highly recommend it. Like, this is the type of stuff I like to see, this kind of game. So, yeah, Hi-Fi Rush, pretty fun game. The next game on my honorable mention list is Parkitect, which I believe was made by Texel Raptor, and that came out in 2018. And Parkitect is basically a roller coaster tycoon game. We have Planet Coaster for newer theme park management games, which is closer to Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, although that game I think came out quite a while ago. And that game actually didn't really hit all the points I wanted it to, although it's fun. It's a fun game. But Parkitect is more like old school Roller Coaster Tycoon and is a lot more focused on the management aspects of things, although there's a very robust and fun building system in the game. It's an isometric style game with really cool, simple kind of graphics, and I just had a lot of fun with it. I enjoy this. This isn't my favorite type of game, though. I can't put it up there with the best. But if you're ever looking for a modern roller coaster tycoon game that is more like the old school style, then I highly recommend Parkitect. There's a lot of fun to be had in it, and a lot of cool things you can do. And it's a fun waste of your time. Go on YouTube and watch people build crazy parks, and it's amazing what people can do with this small kind of art style and smaller sort of game compared to something elaborate like Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. And at least in this game, when you start building more elaborate parks, your computer doesn't burst into flames or anything. So Parkitect's a fun game. Check it out. The last three on my honorable mentions list are not as great, but I can't quite say they're terrible. And the first would be Tears of the Kingdom, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to put as their game of the year or their best game. And Tears of the Kingdom just didn't really wow me. I wasn't really wowed by Breath of the Wild either. Although I do like this change in direction for the series. I mean, I prefer the older style, but I don't mind this newer open world kind of thing. I enjoy it. I had a million issues with Tears of the Kingdom. I had a million issues with Breath of the Wild. I made a video, which actually is my most downvoted video, surprise, talking about how I wasn't really excited for Tears of the Kingdom because I didn't think Nintendo was going to fix a lot of the issues I had in the first game. And I was wrong about certain things, but I was right about a lot. A lot of the quality of life issues that you would think would be fixed were not fixed. And it's like so many games have come out in the span between the first and second game that have rectified these issues, and Nintendo just didn't. And while they added a lot of new stuff, I was impressed by. And I'm really impressed by how they were able to fit all this stuff technically on the Switch, which is a completely aging system at this point. It was kind of aging when it released. It gets into the same flow that I had with Breath of the Wild, where I feel like I'm just repeating the same tasks over and over again to just delay the game when I could just kind of go and do the game. And it's the game, the main parts of the game, aren't that gripping to me. The dungeons were improved to a degree where they now feel a little bit more like themed original dungeons, but they kind of have the same complexity as Divine Beasts, and they're short. One of which, the Water Temple, I think I completed in about 8 minutes. And the bosses were a bit lackluster. So I like a lot about the game, and I think that this is probably here to stay. This Hyrule map they've created is probably what they were going for. So I can see them just continuing to use this map and expand upon it, but I don't know, man. It needs a lot of changes to be more in line with what I would like to see, and I don't think that's really going to happen, The new mechanics are okay. The fusion mechanic, to me, didn't do it for me. It's cool for a bit, but then it becomes another step between you and a weapon, and it's almost like they doubled down on the problem. The Ultra Hand mechanic was great, and I can't say I really had anything bad to say about that. I found it really fun. I was a bit worried at first that it was going to be it is the focus of the game, but that it was going to make it more of like a sandbox Garry's Mod style physics game. And it doesn't. It's implemented well, and I had a lot of fun with it. So, yeah, Tears of the Kingdom, it's all right. Last two honorable mentions, I'm just going to say them both in the same go, because they're kind of similar, and I guess not really, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the game. I could put this on the worst list because it's not very well balanced. It's kind of glitchy and it has an early access feel to it, but I liked it. I like Dead by Daylight, and I really liked Friday the 13th, the game, even though that game was a horrible, horrible, buggy mess. This game is way more composed than that game was. So it feels more in line to like Friday the 13th rather than Dead by Daylight. But I had a lot of fun with this. There's a lot of balancing issues in this game. Like the game kind of becomes a cakewalk for the victims once you get into the flow and know how the game works because the game is so map knowledge focused. You just know where everything spawns and where to go, and you can just lock it down real quick. So it loses a lot of steam like that, but I still had a lot of fun with it, and it's a game that's really easy to just pick up and play a couple matches. I think the developers actually did go and start working on some balancing changes, so that's cool to see. But I haven't really kept up with it so much, so I'm not sure if, I'm not sure if that really fixed things. Also, the worry always with a game like this is dwindling numbers of players. This game could fizzle out and die in a couple months or something like that, so that's a bummer. But yeah, I had fun with it. The next game is Phasmophobia, which is a game I think has quite a bit more steam and has been around longer. Phasmophobia is like a ghost investigation game. Like imagine you're on Ghost Hunters or something, and you're kind of trying to go in and by methods of deduction figure out what type of ghost is in the house. And it can be spooky at times. After a while playing this game, as people have said, you get used to the events and when they're going to occur. Things are random, but you just get a sixth sense, so to speak, for when things are going to happen. So it loses some scare factor, but it's a fun game, and there was a big content update over the summer. Not so much a content update, but they revamped a lot of the mechanics of the game. It can be a pain in the ass sometimes. It can be glitchy and a little obtuse, but I find far more often than not it works as intended. And it's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre gets a little repetitive, you just kind of get bored of it, but you come back and it's fun. It's a game you can also play in VR if you've ever wanted to shit your pants. It's something you wanted to try. Play the game in VR. So that's that. Those are my honorable mentions. Now we're going to move on to the worst games, get them out of the way, and talk about the good stuff. Well, I'm going to put this one at the back of the list, so it's not the worst game I played this year, but it would be Sons of the Forest, the sequel to The Forest, which is a pretty fun survival kind of horror game that I've had a lot of fun with, played a lot. I think a lot of people's issue with this game is how it came out in early access, and I don't think that was advertised super well. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't think it was, and I think that's a little trick developers are using these days, kind of hyping a game up and then, oh, by the way, it's early access, and kind of tying your hands, so to speak. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Well, I don't like it, but Sons of the Forest is just an incomplete alpha game. It's like I don't want to play. I should have. This is a game I certainly regret purchasing. And I'm sure in 5 years from now it'll be a good game, but I don't really see a reason to play a game that lacks almost all of the features of The Forest. Now, at this point in the game's development, I don't know what has been implemented, so that's why I put this all the way down here, because there's probably been a lot of updates since I've played it, but upon launch it was just, yeah. Now, granted, it is an early access game, so on one hand, that is to be expected, but it's just kind of I don't even, when you see something like this, it makes me wonder, did we really need a sequel to The Forest? I don't know. So anyways, that's Sons of the Forest. It just didn't do it for me. Next on this list of the worst of the year is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pack. Now, this is DLC, but it's going on this list. It's 48 new tracks, which is the same amount as the base game. These tracks are mostly piss poor. There are 6 new tracks in total throughout the entire 48 tracks that are brand new courses, and I don't even really like all of those. There are some good ones, though. Most of the tracks in here, I feel, I could be wrong, but I feel are just Mario Kart Tour tracks, which are awful. Awful tracks. They're boring, and they have sometimes a new mechanic where the track changes on different laps, which is kind of neat. But more often than not, I find these tour tracks extremely repetitive, and just they don't have the same level of care as the original tracks, as well as the older tracks. You know, Mario Kart always has tracks from older games, and they're not done very well. Even from a graphical standpoint, I feel like there's a huge downgrade. These tracks are just kind of garbage, and you know, it's funny because about 5 years ago or so, I remember thinking, I really like the engine and the gameplay of Mario Kart 8, and as much as I hate DLC, I feel like it would almost be beneficial to just add on to the game with track packs, I guess, and you know, just leave it at that. And now they've done that, and they suck. So I don't know. They're just lame. The new characters that they've added, it's cool that they added them. We have Funky Kong now, Pauline, a Piranha Plant, Petey Piranha. There's like 6 new characters, so that's cool. But yeah, this is just lame. I mean, I've said my piece about Nintendo. I don't think they're very good anymore at all for most of what they do, and this is just par for the course for them, I guess. So yeah, not good. The second worst game of the year for me is Hogwarts Legacy. I have a lot of content on this channel of talking about that. I think I have a first impressions and a review video. I think my review video is like a half an hour long, so I won't say much about it, but it's another piss poor game. The game is front loaded, I think intentionally, with a lot of good content. Like pretty much for me, it was about 6 hours or so of content. I tend to play open world games pretty slowly, but it's front loaded with good stuff as they ease you into Hogwarts and the way that the game works, and introduce new mechanics to you. But basically, by the time you get your broom and are allowed to fly around, the game just falls apart. Literally feels like a mobile game, and it feels like most of the non-story mission tasks you do are just like mobile game daily tasks. Flying to some balloons, fight the same enemies over and over again, land on a fucking bullseye. It's just incredibly lame. The game is technically kind of a mess too. I guess it functions, but it has a lot of optimization issues and some glitches and a lot of just weird shit. Audio issues, a lot of audio issues in this game. And you can only run around Hogwarts Castle. You know, that's the best part of the game, and I even have issues with the way it's designed. I think that it's not designed particularly well the more I've played the game. And even, you know, there's only so many times you can get a butterfly and bring it to a painting or smack a key into a fucking hole, and it's just a very boring game. You know, a lot of commendation has been given to the company, you know, which I think was only doing mobile games, and this is like their first big game, for what they created, and I guess I do have to applaud that to a degree, but also the more I play it, the more it really just does feel like a mobile game. Even the UI of the game is terrible and clunky and is designed to look like a mobile game, and I think that was intentional on some part, probably from the producers. Yeah, this game is just, it was lame. You know, a lot of people like this game, and so that's good that they get the Harry Potter game they were looking for, but to me, that game doesn't exist and probably never will. But I still have, like, the Harry Potter PC games. But, you know, this game to me is, you know, it's mediocre to the point where I can't even pick it up and kind of mess around. Even just flying around is not really that engaging to me, because it's like, yeah, I've seen everything, but when I land, I know what's going to be waiting me is mediocrity. So I don't even really feel myself coming back to this. Maybe someday, but yeah, I had a little bit of fun in the beginning playing it on hard difficulty, and the combat system is pretty good. Like, again, it becomes a bit tiresome after a while. You do get into a flow of the combat, and it does become boring. But playing the game on hard mode at the beginning with a fairly decent combat system, definitely a good idea. That was fun. So there are some good moments in here, but overall it was not a good experience. I wouldn't even say this is mediocre. I would say this is probably like a 4 or 3.5 out of 10. It's just has so much, you know, just mediocrity and, you know, just poor decisions in game making in it, and it's written weirdly, and the addition of this ancient magic mechanic and everything feels to me like they didn't know what to do for a Harry Potter game, so they just went to the generic fantasy thing. A lot of the story in this game to me feels like a spec script, like it was just something floating around that they just took and made and to this Harry Potter game, so it's not for me, man. This game didn't do it. All right, the worst game I played this year. Before I even tell you what it is, I'll tell you why it was the worst game, and that's because, well, first off, I didn't think this was going to be great, and I didn't go into it with high expectations, but I was still disappointed, and I think that's why it's the worst. You know, the game is mediocre in pretty much every respect, and the biggest issue with the game, I think the truest, in my heart of hearts, biggest issue is there's no fun to be had here. And if you're not having fun in a game, then what the hell are you doing? And that game is Starfield by Bethesda. This is one of the most unfun, boring, lame corporate products I've ever seen. Certainly there are games that are worse than this, like we have Cyberpunk at launch and games that are in a technically disastrous state. I don't think Starfield was particularly perfect when it came out in terms of performance and, technicality, but the whole game is so incredibly mediocre. Now, I've kind of been done with Bethesda since Fallout 4. Obviously, that game is like a masterpiece compared to this, but the direction that they were taking the series in is not for me. So, like Fallout 76 and stuff like that. I don't really know what the opinion is on that now, but I didn't think that was a very good game. It just wasn't for me. And this, I assumed, would be them doubling down on that sort of thing for this game. And that's pretty much what they did. But it felt even worse because I really expected to maybe enjoy the first couple hours of this game. And then once it got to really exploring these procedurally generated wastelands that I knew would probably be mostly empty and copy-pasted, then that's when the mediocrity would sit in. And for me, I was bored to tears from the beginning. It just felt like business as usual for Bethesda. So I think that they're just a company I'm done with. More power to you if you like this game and have put all this time in and enjoy it. That's great. But for me, it was probably the worst game I played this year. And especially coming from a company with a lot of money like them. Although there's companies that, like I said, of course, have more money and make worse games. But, oh man, I don't know. How do you all feel about this game, Starfield? It was the most unfun game I played this year. That's what I'll call it. So that's all the worst games. That's the honorable mentions. And let's get on to the best. These are the best games I played, and I put them in order of how much I enjoyed them. There's 6 of them. Let's get going. The first, really quickly, is a game called Screen Cheat. Now, Screen Cheat is not a blow-your-mind experience or anything, but it's just really fun. And Screen Cheat's a party game. It's kind of like a shooter, like kind of old-school team deathmatch, but you can't see the other person. You can't see the other player on your screen. The only way you can tell where they are is by looking at their screen, but they're seeing from first person. So you kind of have to get used to the maps and kind of cheat and look at their screen to try to guess where they are and then try to kill them. All the weapons are wacky in this game. You hit people with chandeliers and like EMP bombs and old pirate guns, and you pretty much insta-kill when you shoot someone in this game. And this game is just a lot of fun. It's not the greatest game to play by yourself with bots. It's all right. But playing with a friend is a lot of fun, A lot of people say that this game can kind of get boring, and I can see that. It can get a little repetitive, but you're not meant to sit and play it for 5 hours at a time. This is a game you can easily pick up and play a few matches on. And there's a lot of game options and things you can change to freshen up the experience and just change things up. I always like when developers give you a lot of options. And the thing that I really liked about this that I wasn't sure of going into it was how wacky it is. It's an indie game, but there's just so much wackiness and zaniness in the humor and the way the game is completely just insane and doesn't take itself seriously. I find the game very funny, just the way it's presented. I mean, there's literally an Australian mode in the game that just replaces all the textures with Australian flags, and it changes the announcer to probably the game developer doing an incredibly bad Australian accent. It's just really fun. So Screen Cheat definitely goes up as one of the best games I played this year. I'll keep playing it, I'm sure. It's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it. It's dirt cheap. I picked it up on sale for $2, but at full price, it's probably $15 or something. It's probably worth it. You're going to have a lot of fun with it. The next game is called The Case of the Golden Idol, which also didn't come out this year, but this is a really cool game. This game is not, I don't think it's made by the same developer as Return of the Obra Dinn, but it's very similar in style. It's got this cool, like 90s kind of graphics look to it, point and click kind of look that I really like. And it's just got an amazing sort of tone to it. And it's a deduction detective sort of game where you're shown some sort of crime scene that's in the middle of an event that's almost frozen in time. And it's up to you to figure out what happened. The game gives you almost like a Mad Lib style listing of what happened, and with a lot of blanks in it. And it's up to you to investigate the crime scene and collect words and phrases and then fill everything in. And there's a lot of deducing that happens in this game, and it can be quite difficult. Some of the cases in this game took me quite a while and were real brain busters. But that was the fun in deducing things. I like detective games, but this takes place in like the 1700s and has this sort of like secret society sort of witchcraft weirdness to it, and it's just a very fun game. So I highly recommend this game if you want to play a deduction game where you have to really think about things and take your time. Something that's not like most games you're going to play these days. It's very cool, and I hope that there are more games like this and Obra Dinn, that have this similar style of gameplay to them. I really like this game, and I hope the developers come out with another game. That'd be really cool. Next game I played this year is called Planescape Torment, which is an older game based in the Dungeons and Dragons universe. And this is a story-based game. It's basically a visual novel, but it's kind of like a immersive sim almost, you could say, or an RPG. It's a very old school game, but there's too much to say about this to be concise. It's an incredibly vast game, but it takes place in that universe, and it's mostly based upon your decisions. And the writing this is one of those games where it's old school, and the options that you have available to you are pretty overwhelming in terms of the way that the game can go, and the things that you can do, and the events that will occur because of a different turn that you took in the game. And that's pretty apparent from the beginning mission, the opening of the game, if you will, where you're trying to escape the like asylum that you're in. The writing is incredible, and this game can get very deep at times too, very philosophical, but it's also quite funny. And the writing overall is just incredible. I look to games like I'm looking at some of the worst games of this year, and the writing was so piss poor and so mediocre, which the writing has a huge effect on the game. The writing dictates the characters' personalities and how you connect to those characters. And in a game like this, the writing is, because it's impressive that the characterization is done so well, but also that the game is mostly reading writing. There's so much writing, and it's all so good. This is one of the best games I've played by far, and probably my life. It is really a truly spectacular game. The next game, which did not come out this year as well, but that's Kerbal Space Program. Now, I played Kerbal Space Program probably like 8 years ago when it was still in early access, and I enjoyed it then. This is a space flight simulation game, physics simulation game. There are some career aspects to it if you do the career mode of building up your astronaut complex or building up your space, center basically, and unlocking items and stuff, but you can also play it in a sandbox mode. And coming back to this game really hooked me again. I love space exploration. I love space. I like watching spacewalks and watching the Mars missions and everything. And this game is constantly showing you new things. It's very educational. And the thing I like about it is you can't brute force your way through the game, really. If you don't know how to do certain things or have a basic understanding of them and take the time to do the tutorials or outside of the game and educate yourself in these real-life mechanics. You don't obviously need a degree to play this game, but you can't just get to the moon through brute force in this game. It will not happen. You have to have basic understanding, and that's what I like about it. And also, I've gotten into using mods with this game, and that opens up a whole other sort of avenue in this game, and it's endlessly replayable. It's a shame what happened with Kerbal Space Program 2. I don't think that game's ever going to get finished. That game's kind of a mess. It seems like it's in very early pre-alpha state, and it seems like a lot of stuff that's in the game now is just mods from this game that have been implemented in, kind of. Yeah, that's a shame, but this is great, and I have this game looking better than Kerbal Space Program 2 with some mods, so yeah, it's pretty great. It's endlessly replayable, and I love it. It's a lifelong game for me, for sure. Okay, here we come to my number 2 spot, the runner-up for the best game of the year. And surprisingly, it's an early access game, which is normally not my thing. But I got sucked into this game. I'll say up front that this game is... I do recommend checking it out because I think it's one of the coolest things I've ever played. But it is an early access game. You know, it is buggy sometimes. And sometimes it's game-breakingly buggy, and that's annoying. It's not technically super well put together yet. It needs some tweaking and fixes done. But the game is so gripping and fun that I'm kind of looking past it. And that game is called Shadows of Doubt. I've seen some people talking about it, but I don't think it's super popular or anything like that. This is an immersive sim, and it's a detective game. It's a game where they create this procedurally generated city in kind of like square, like on a grid, like different city blocks. And it has voxel-based graphics, so it has that Minecraft look, which I wasn't really keen on at first, but now I quite like it. It has some modern lighting and stuff in it too. And it takes place in 1979 in a sort of alternative universe. Has that kind of cool style to it, very noir-esque style game. It's very impressive that it has this voxel graphic look, but it feels very dark and noirish. And you basically go around and solve crimes. And the way you do it is pretty cool. You go to a crime scene, and they don't hold your hand at all. The way in which you can solve the crime is anyway, you find people's fingerprints, go through people's computers, try to like break into their work and look through employee records. The game can get very cool in the way you can solve cases because every single person in this game, when the game creates the city, every single resident is like given a home, a schedule, a workplace, a voice type, a handwriting type, blood type, fingerprint. Everybody gets labeled so that you can have this incredible like detailed sort of thing. You can find a fingerprint and you can try to like break into their workplace to try to look through employee records to match the fingerprint. You can like trace calls by breaking into the power section of a apartment complex in the basement and disabling the security system so you can get in there and try to reverse trace calls. It's very, very, very cool. And on top of all of that, you have these immersive sim sort of things. You have to eat and sleep and drink, but they don't distract from the game. They just kind of you get basically bonuses from doing those things instead of having to do them all the time. And there are a lot of like very immersive sim sort of moments. Being able to like go into a diner and sit down at the booth, open up a paper, order some coffee, and go and look over your case files. You basically have this big cork board with all the Polaroid photos with the string connecting them, that stereotypical image. That's how you organize your cases. You create like these Polaroid photos for each piece of evidence, and sometimes the game auto connects them for you, but you can make your own connections, and that's how you organize things and get through and solve the case. So it's really fun, and I've never played anything like this. It's so cool. The downsides of this game, obviously some bugs and glitches and stuff, but after you there's a couple different types of cases in the game. They're all random, but randomly generated, I should say, or procedurally generated. But once you figure out the trick for solving one, it can kind of trivialize things, and the game needs sorts of tweaks in that direction. The most recent update for this game didn't really fix any of that. It just kind of added a new case type. So, you know what I mean? And then in addition to that, there's just more like just fine tuning stuff that needs, it feels like it's in a pre-alpha or alpha state, and it needs some mechanics implemented to really flesh things out. Do I think it's ever going to be finished? I don't know. It's hard to recommend a game that you don't think is going to be finished, right? But the damn thing is so gripping and cool. Like I said, I've just never played anything like this. It's hard not to recommend it, but I don't think it's probably going to get finished, or at least in the way that people think. I think the way it is probably the way it's going to be, and all you're going to get are probably some bug fixes and maybe some performance improvements. The developer making this is working on adding modding support, which is cool, but to me is always a signal that they're kind of done working on the game, so that modders can kind of come in and fix the game. And modders, you can't rely on modders to fix a game, right? Because modding is, let's call it for what it is game development. So you're asking, for people that are just enjoy a game and are doing this as a hobby to fix a game. It's generally not going to happen. I think that what a lot of modders are doing already is adding some expanding of the immersive sim elements to make the game seem more lifelike. I mean, the game is there's a pretty good feeling when you're playing it, but to just increase that's what a lot of the mods are going to do, I think. The more of the core gameplay stuff that needs some tweaking, I don't think that's going to get fixed. But even the way it is right now, it still offers an incredible amount of content. I just recommend picking it up and checking it out because it's just so cool. There's not a lot like it. So that's Shadows of Doubt, probably one of the coolest games I've played this year. Let's get on to the best game I've played this year, which is bar none the best, and by quite a big margin of all the games. The best game I played this year was Pizza Tower. All right, by far. This game came out at the beginning of the year too. I think this game was made by like one person or one or two people. Tour de Pizza was the company. This game is basically like Wario Land, but on steroids. And I love when companies do this. They revitalize a kind of I guess a dead genre. It doesn't always work out, right? Like Yooka-Laylee or something, but this is basically Wario Land on steroids with a pizza theme, but it's very wacky. It's not necessarily, you play as Peppino, this pizza guy, and there's a lot of pizza stuff, but it's just so zany and crazy. It has this amazing like art style, a hand-drawn art style. It feels like almost like Microsoft Paint. It has like this PG-13 kind of push-in style stuff you wouldn't see in a Nintendo game. It's just very fun. It has great music. The level design is incredible. It's very, very replayable and very arcadey in that sense. But the controls, the momentum sort of based movement in this game is just to die for. It controls so incredibly well. It's a game you can have fun with and have a good challenge with if you have a decent grasp on the controls, but you can really, really master these controls and get really good at them and have some crazy runs and try to get those high scores. It's an amazing game. The level design overall was incredible. I thought that the levels were very varied, had cool mechanics that didn't seem gimmicky to me. And this is a game I just wish the absolute best for the developer, man. Like, I just hope that this person made enough money that they can go on and make a sequel or something, because this person, I don't know who made this, but they need to be making games. It's their calling. This is an incredible game. I think it's like under a gigabyte in size. It's really cheap. I think it's like $20. It is totally worth your money. It's not for everybody because, you take a look at the gameplay, you might not like these kind of that Wario Land-esque movement, but man, is it a good game. So yeah, this one by far was the best game I played this year. I had so much fun playing this. It's super replayable. It hits all the spots for me. I had a great time, and most of all, the most important factor is I had a ton of fun. Well, this was an incredibly long video, but I guess it's a podcast-esque thing, and I guess that's a suitable length for that. Anyways, these are the best and worst games I played this year. Let me know what yours were or what you thought. If you disagreed with any of my choices, let me know why, because I'm curious to see where your thoughts lie. So that's that. Thanks for watching. I'll probably be back next with my top and worst books of the year. I read a lot of books this year, so I'm really excited to talk about that. Peace out.